All right, guys, we're going to get into our fifth and final guest of this episode. I'm so excited that this babe messaged me and decided to come on the show because she has been one of my biggest foundational supporters of all time. She always gives me a smack in the face when I need it, when I'm feeling low. So to have her be a part of the show in our community is so amazing. So I'm going to introduce my friend Tracy. Hey, girl, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having
I'm
me.
so excited that you came on. You have always taught me so much about everything, and I always feel like I take so much away every time we're together. So I'm really glad that you get to be a part of this show and our community to share a little bit about your birth story today.
Oh, that's awesome. I feel the same way about you. We support each other, love each other, bring each other up. So I'm happy. Feel very privileged to be here today.
Thank you. Yeah, we taught
Yes.
each other what true friendship was and honesty, right? And
Yes.
I just love our friendship story, and it just made it so strong at one point. And it was just like a forever bond, and I'm
Yeah.
pumped about that. So obviously, I know everything, not everything, but most part. Can you tell the community a little bit about yourself before we jump into the wild birth stories that I know are about to come out?
Okay, I'm Tracy. I'm 36 years old. I'm a mother of two kids. I have a 12-year-old and a 12-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. And I live in Grand Prairie, Alberta. And I'm just trying to make it through COVID with my sanity and my spirit and my hair.
Yeah. It's a very crucial part. My
Yeah,
hairdresser's like, "Hey, there's something going on back there." I know it.
yeah.
I know. I know. I love that. I love that. And the kids too. It's been so great. I've been able to capture moments of the kids, and it's been so awesome to watch them grow. And it's happening so fast. I'm sure
It
you
is,
feel
yeah.
that way.
Yeah,
every time, every time I see another post, I'm like, "What? No,
yeah, yeah.
no."
It's crazy how fast
No,
it goes.
it does. So to jump into your stories then, my dear, your due dates, were you on time? Were you late? How did that work out?
Okay, so with my first child, um, I was 6 weeks or 34 weeks. So she was born on May 29th. So 6 weeks after that date, she was due.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah, so she was super early. She was super early, but we kind of knew she was going to come early. So it's a really crazy story. And then with my second child, my son, he was 3 weeks early as well.
Oh wow. Oh, both
Yeah.
early then.
And he
Oh
was born
wow.
at 36. Yeah, 36 weeks. Well, 4 weeks early. He was born at 36. So both early. Yeah.
Oh wow. And so obviously maybe none of the plans worked out, but was there any sort of birth plan for you? This is a whole new subject for me. I didn't know this
Yeah.
existed, but it makes great sense for someone who's OCD and anxiety. So did you have any birth plans for your babies or how'd that?
Um, my first pregnancy, so I was young, and honestly, my only plan with her, because when I got pregnant with her, I got diagnosed with something called fibromuscular dysplasia.
Oh,
So I thought, yeah, at my first prenatal appointment, I found out that I had like a natural clogging of like my renal arteries. They like just naturally clog up. So I got diagnosed with fibromuscular dysplasia and then had an angioplasty at 14 weeks pregnant to clear out my renal arteries. So basically, the only plan with her is to keep her inside as long as I could, as long
wow,
as I could.
that's absolutely fair. That wow,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really big thing to get at a young age and early on in your pregnancy. Like,
Yeah, it was insane. It was insane. I went to my first prenatal appointment and the doctor, my blood pressure was like 225 over like 125. So like walking around like stroke level. And she
oh
was
my,
like, are you nervous? And I was like, no, I'm not nervous. Well, maybe nervous finding out I wasn't pregnant, but baby was there. And she referred me to a nephrologist and he scanned my renal arteries and diagnosed me, and it's super rare. So the fact that I had a doctor that knew what he was doing and could get me in to get them cleared out in that time frame was like super lucky. But it was like so shocking. And then you're diagnosed and thrown on an operation table, and then you're just trying to keep the baby in there. Like you're so
yeah.
sick, but you're just trying to do whatever you can to keep her in there. And it was the same sort of thing with Kate. I already knew I was sick with it, so it was just like, let's keep him in there as long as we can. That was the only
Wow.
plan. Yeah.
So you knew immediately. So this was something like it wasn't a one time thing. If you got pregnant again, this was going to be
No.
kind of like that. Oh, you didn't know that?
I knew that after having Isla that because it's a disease I have, I'm gonna have it for the rest of my life, sort of
Oh,
thing.
I
So
see. I see.
yeah, it wasn't a disease that is caused from pregnancy. It was just a disease that went so long throughout my life I didn't get caught from anything, that me getting pregnant with Isla like literally saved my life. If I
That's
didn't get pregnant with her,
wow.
I probably would have had a stroke at like 22, 21 years old.
That's so she's not only like a little miracle just in
Yeah,
herself, but also for you too. That's
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
it makes me just want to hug her even more and just love your guys' relationship so much more. And
Yeah,
then how brave of you to like go through that again with Kane. And but
yeah,
at least like you said, this time you knew. So
yeah,
then maybe you were a little bit not more equipped, obviously, because how can you mentally fully prepare for something
yeah,
like that, even if you've been through it, but at
yeah,
least this time it wasn't like as much of a shock for you when that happened, that it wasn't the
yeah.
first.
Yeah, for sure. Like I knew getting pregnant the second time that it would be more difficult, but it wasn't as difficult because I'd already gone through two renoplasties by that angiorenoplasties by that point. So my arteries were cleared out and my blood pressure was good when I got pregnant with him. It's just an extra like fear you have because it's also such a rare disease that you go and talk to doctors and doctors have never seen it and have no idea
Wow.
what it
Oh,
is.
wow.
Yeah.
So you really
Yeah.
had an angel there knowing what was
Yeah.
going on. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is, I knew, I was like, I know she's got something good to share. Not good,
Yeah.
but like something. So it's not, people just need to know that it is rare, but it's a possibility, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great. And obviously, like we said with Holly, she had a really kind of not the greatest first experience, but it didn't scare her away enough. It just kind of equipped her to understand what would happen the
Yeah.
second time. And I think you're more in the same sense. And so
Yeah.
obviously, that's so amazing. And they're both like super healthy, amazing kids now. So
Yeah.
obviously
They're awesome.
all that risk and all that hardship was worth it. So for both of them, or for one, were they both cesarean or was it vaginal? How did that?
So with Isla, 2 weeks before I gave birth to her, I was put on bed rest in Edmonton because I lived in Edmonton at the time. So I was in bed on bed rest for 2 weeks prior because my blood pressure was riding up so high they couldn't bring it down. It was like 175 over like 115. So they're like, that's it, you're done. You're going to the hospital. And
Yeah.
then yeah, I remember when I got checked in because my blood pressure was so high. I had because the nurses come and look to see if I was like extremely overweight
Oh yeah.
because
Nope.
that they thought, well, she's got to be like overweight or something for her blood pressure to be that high. And they'd come in, they'd be like, that is not what we were expecting. And then they'd get the yeah, I'm like, nope, not overweight, just a really weird disease.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was in there for 2 weeks and they were amazing. And then one morning I woke up and I went blind. Like I lost
Whoa.
my eyesight. Yeah, for probably like 15 seconds. And then I said, I just went completely black. Like I couldn't see anything. Like I wasn't like I passed out. Like I was awake. It just went like my eyesight went because my blood pressure was so high that that's like one of the symptoms of it. And she's like, okay, I'm getting the doctor. And he came in, he said, okay, we're having a baby today. And then, yeah, and it was like so quick. And then like reeled me down to the labor room. And then they started to induce me. And then, yeah, so that was an induction and then Kane was a emergency C-section, which is another crazy story.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So
Yeah.
carry on.
Okay, so with Kane, I was in Grand Prairie and everything was going good, blood pressure was looking good, and then all of a sudden I went to the washroom during the night and I'd never gone like naturally, so I didn't know like when your mucus plug fell out or like if your water broke and it had like a lot of water, but I just thought it was pee and I went back to bed and woke up and I said, Joe, I think my water like might have broke or is rupturing. And so we went to the hospital here and I called my mom who lives in Edmonton and I was like, okay, I'm at the hospital. I'm not sure what's going on yet, but I think I might be having a baby. And she's like, okay, let me know because as soon as you know, like I'm in the car driving to Grand Prairie, right? So
Okay.
we get in there and we're talking to the doctor and they're like, oh yeah, okay, we're gonna, induce the labor. And then I told them I had fibromuscular dysplasia. And because Grand Prairie is such a small town and our hospital isn't equipped with like a cardiovascular surgeon.
Yeah.
Um, if and because I had it in my renal arteries and I had a small amount in my carotid arteries. So if my carotid arteries collapsed from pushing, they had they didn't have a surgeon in Grand Prairie that could help me. So
Jeez.
before they had informed me of that, like ended up years before going to Cleveland to get scanned properly because there's a specialist in Cleveland for the disease. So they ended up calling my specialist in Cleveland, and I phoned my mom and I said, okay, we're going to have this baby, because I wasn't told, like, we don't have a surgeon here that can help you. So my
Yeah.
mom got in the car and started driving.
Oh
So
no.
we're sitting there waiting, and as soon as she gets to the hospital, the doctor comes back and says, we're airlifting you to Edmonton because we can't help carotid arteries collapse here. So we can't do the birth here. We're going to have to fly you to Edmonton. So my mom drives all the way to Grand Prairie, gets in the hospital room, and they're told, okay, we're flying her back. So then my husband goes, okay, Patty, which is my mom, awesome, amazing woman, you go on the
Yes.
plane with Tracy. He's like, I'm going to go home, grab Isla and her dogs, and I'll drive your car back to
Oh,
Edmonton for you. Yeah, so
oh.
she went back to Edmonton with he came, but it was like crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that is it. You don't expect that, but it's like
Yeah.
in that moment, you're just like, okay, well, no, we got to do this because like if
Yeah.
I'm gonna go through this, and whether it ends in a cesarean or naturally, you want
Yeah.
that doctor there with any sort of heart doctor. You don't want anyone playing with that kind of thing as much
No.
as it's like, okay, this is terrifying, we got to go. But like, good on Joe too for
Yeah.
being like recognizing that your mom was probably super stressed on the 4 hour drive
Yeah.
up there and like
Yeah.
had to drive 4 hours back, like the poor freaking woman. So like good on him
Yeah.
for,
He was
like
just like,
letting,
you go. Yeah, you go with
yeah.
her. And
Yeah,
then when I arrived in Edmonton, they were going to start inducing me, and Joe hadn't got there yet. And then
oh
I
no.
told them to wait. I was like, just wait a second, right? Because my husband's not here. And if I get induced, like, you can go so fast into labor if you're induced. It's
Yeah.
not like natural. It's like contraction, contraction, contraction. So I waited. And then they got the orders from the doctor. And if I had said yes, like, they weren't supposed to induce me. Like, if they would have started to induce me, that would have been wrong. Like, they
Yeah.
weren't told to. So if I hadn't waited for Joe, I would have been induced, and it was the incorrect thing to do because they still weren't sure if it was safe for me to go vaginally at that point.
Yeah.
So it was a good thing I told them to wait, because that would have been a whole other gong show.
Yeah. And so then you waited, and then Joe got there, and then you said he was emergency, right?
Yeah. So he got there, and I was in the hospital at the Royal Albert for probably about a week, I think, when they were trying to see if I would go naturally, or if they were going to induce me, or if they were going to go do a C-section. And then they decided to do it a C-section because I was starting to go into labor, and they said, emergency C-section, we can't have you push. And so they did it that way. They just decided to
Nice.
go in and do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
I think just because, and I'm not saying maybe going naturally it would have put any cause on that, but in that moment, sometimes it's like I feel like the less stress on you and
Hmm.
the baby, with your, especially with your condition, was
Yeah.
probably the better route where it's like you just don't know, right? And not
Yeah.
saying that something can go wrong in surgery or C-section, but at
Yeah.
least you're already in surgery, you're already prepped for that. If something does go wrong, you're in that space, not trying to
Yeah.
push the baby up at the same time and then your heart stops or whatever
Yeah.
happens,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just a situation, which was the best choice, right? Because, like you said, they could control it more. They don't have my vitals going up and down from,
Yeah.
like,
And who
the
knows?
going. Yeah.
Yeah, your body had never done that. So you had also no idea of how your body would act to that. As
Hmm.
well, not saying it wouldn't, but like for Holly, she was trying, and then it was just like, and same with my mom. My mom tried forever, and it was just like she almost died giving birth to my
Yeah.
first brother. So come to the second, it was like, like let's not put the stress on everybody, the baby, mom, doctors, everyone. Let's just go through this the other way. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still learning all this stuff. So when it came to like medication wise, and you may not remember because it was so fast, do they just like numb you, or they give you like laughing gas, fentanyl, like any sort of thing to help with anxiety?
So, when I got wheeled in to get the C-section, right? You have an anesthesiologist, and they give you anesthesia that, like, numbs you from your neck down, basically. And you're
Yeah.
sitting there, and I remember this. It's so funny. I always tell the story. Went in to get the C-section, like, you're wheeled in, you're in your hospital gown, back of the gown's open, your ass is out, you're about to give birth, you're looking like a hot mess, like, not your best moment, right?
Yeah.
So
No.
then they're like that. Yeah. yeah, they're like, the anesthesiologist is going to come and talk the medicine. And you're like, okay, yeah. What walks through the door is the most gorgeous anesthesiologist I've ever seen in my life. Like you're thinking, oh, this old guy's going to come in or this older woman. No, it's like God of an anesthesiologist walks through and you're like, fuck me. Why do you have to be beautiful right now? My ass is out. My ass crack is here. I look like shit. And he comes in and starts talking to you. And like, seriously, all I'm thinking is like, why do you have to be good looking?
Yeah.
I look like a crazy person right now. And then, but he was so kind and so calming and he just like explained everything. But it's just such a funny story because I remember going like, are you fucking kidding me?
Right
You have to
now.
be like this beautiful 30-year-old anesthesiologist talking about how he's like goes across the sea, goes across like Doctors Without Borders and does all this stuff. And you're like, okay, this is awesome. Thanks.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
This
I
is a
think there
great
was an
moment for
episode.
me.
Yeah, I think there was an episode of Friends. I think when like Rachel put her said she like, well, I put my pinky in his chin dimple. Like,
Yeah. Like,
not the
oh,
time.
it's just,
Not the time.
no.
Not the distraction I need right now.
No, no. You're like, really? No, thank you. Bring the old
Thanks.
guy in. I want an old guy. I don't want
Yeah,
you
where's
right
the old
now.
part? Come on
Yeah.
now. Not
Yeah.
this.
It's such a,
Not this. I love it. That's a
yeah.
perfect story. I'm excited.
Yeah. But I think like the craziest part of a C-section is the after, like when you get wheeled into the recovery room and you're there by yourself and you can't move your feet and you can't move your arms and you're literally laying there thinking like I'm never gonna be able to move again. Like I'm
Yeah.
paralyzed for sure, but then you eventually are able to like wiggle your toes and you're like, okay, I'm coming out of it. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
okay.
It's like when you wake up and you've slept on your arm funny and you can't
Yeah.
feel like you're like, I know I have a limb, but it's not there. You're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, did I do permanent damage? And then
Yeah.
slowly your hand starts coming back to life. You're like, okay, yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, I'm
It's
okay.
like,
I'm okay.
yeah. And then you're by yourself too, right? So that's like,
Yeah.
of course, like if there's maybe someone there like reminding you, like, no, it's okay. And of course, you're like,
Yeah.
especially if you have anxiety, you're like, this is it. I
This
had
is
my
it.
baby. Yeah. And this is it. I'm done. I've done what I have to
Yeah.
do. And now the universe is like, okay, thanks. Bye.
Yeah, that's seriously what goes. That went through my head. I was like, I'm never like, this is it. This is my life now. I'm not gonna be able to
Yeah.
move my limbs. Like,
I'll just watch everything.
yeah, yeah, I'll move my head.
Start slowly like becoming like, this is just real life. It's fine. Let's look at the
Yeah,
positives. Oh,
yeah.
frick. But then did you feel like the second time that was it a little less traumatic just because it was like more of a, or was it they equally traumatic?
They were both equally traumatic days. Like my vaginal birth was such a gong show as far as I'm concerned. Like, I had her at the Grey Nuns Hospital and then yeah, it was Grey Nuns. Yeah, Grey Nuns Hospital. But because my disease is so rare, like no one knows like how to treat it, but like good enough. Like when I was after I got induced, they over medicated my blood pressure medication. So like my body is used to running at a high blood pressure. Like I can function at it pretty easy because I was doing it for so long. So they
Yeah.
crashed it. And when they crashed it, it was to the point where like I couldn't even like talk. I
Oh
couldn't
my
like form a
gosh.
sentence. So, and it was such a gong show. And my mom actually wasn't even there for eyelids. I ended up getting induced when she was on her way back from her honeymoon.
Oh
So
wow.
she was traveling back from Europe. And so like I didn't have my mom there. It was just Joe. Like my mom ended up getting there, like I think right after I had her, or almost right when I had her, like just in the nick of time.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, you're feeling sick. And then when I was giving birth to her, I had literally had like 40 people in the room watching it, like all medical students watching the birth because it's like she's got such a rare disease. This is like a once in a lifetime thing for some doctors to experience someone with my disease as giving birth. But it was like you're on the table, like this is another crazy, like on the table spread open, there's like 30-year-old, 20-year-old medical student boys just looking at you, just like, hello, boys, here I am. I don't know you. Didn't go out
Ready
for
to see
dinner,
some
but
nature?
welcome to the glory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
We're gonna
just
about to
like,
get real close real quick here.
yeah, yeah. And it's like triple the amount, like quadruple the amount of people that are usually in the room. And it was just like, okay, now you gotta get used to this. You're feeling sick. And so it was just like a total nightmare. And then with Kane, it was just flying to Edmonton and then just waiting for the decision and going in for the C-section. But Kane's was a little less traumatic because Isla was my first, and then it was so many things went wrong with it that it
Totally.
would be pretty. I'd have to be pretty horrific to be worse than her experience with Isla, I think.
Well, we remind her of that all the
Yeah,
time,
she's always
especially
like,
when she's a
"Mom."
shithead.
Yeah, and then if she's being a shit, she's like, "Mom, I'm like a miracle. I saved your life." Okay. And I'm like, do not use that. You're being a shit right now. That is not a
She,
relevant comment.
damn it, she's so much smarter. She got quick,
Yeah.
like she got switty real fast that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so how about the aftermath? Like, so after Isla, when it came to recovery after, how was hers versus? They're quite different, obviously, but how were the healing and the after between the both childbirths?
The healing with Isla was really good. No, I actually the healing with both of them, I didn't find I actually find that having a C-section is easier than a vaginal birth. And people
Yeah,
might think that's weird because it's like a
no,
major surgery, like they're mucking around inside your body. But the vaginal birth, like so much you could tear, you can have like just destroy your girl parts, like,
yep.
and it's like you never know what you're going to get if you have a vaginal birth.
And a
Like a
lot of it
C-section,
about birth, sorry, the cord, a lot of in the like the heart rates and stuff,
yeah,
going through that actual canal, there's just so many unknowns of how
yeah,
your body and your like the way your hip placed, the way your
yeah,
all there's so many unknowns where it's when they're going into the surgery, for the most part and again, there can be complications obviously,
yeah,
but there's a pretty straightforward cut open, get
hmm,
in there, get baby, go out, like
yeah.
there's less variables to jump into play there as much, I think.
Yeah, it's so true. And then I found the recovery from the cesarean like easier. Yeah, you can't lift over 10 pounds and you're like you can't like you got to be really careful with that sort of thing. But like with a vaginal birth, like you step up onto a truck that's really high, like and you got stitches down there, you could rip those stitches, right? It's just
Yeah,
so much more traumatic, I think, to the
it's
vajayjay.
yeah, man, I'm with you. I know so many people will say like, and like we said, I think it's too based on people's experiences. For me, obviously, because I've had so many vaginal births over here. Just kidding. For me, it was like watching the people around me and their experiences, especially my mom,
Hmm.
where for the most part, most people I know have had a positive cesarean. And exactly like you said, outside of the fact that you can't do a couple of those things,
Yeah,
fortunately for me, I feel like I would have like my mom will be here. Like I feel like a lot of my family would be present to really
yeah,
support me through that. So for me, wasn't ever a concern, and more like the fact that all of the vaginal birth stories have terrified me now that I'm
yeah.
34 years old. If I ever do get that chance, for me, I'm like, y'all kind of terrified the fuck out of me. So I'll just go to sleep, not feel anything, and wake up in a couple weeks. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's do that.
Yeah, they're terrifying. Some stories you're like, Jesus,
And
Murphy,
I'm
poor
looking at
woman.
some of my friends and I'm like, you guys do know that I still may have to possibly do this in the
Yeah,
future. And you guys, especially, no offense, I love a lot of my friends were first time moms. They didn't have as many moms telling these horrific stories.
no.
I've had to listen to this for like 15, 20 years. And now, even if it's not that bad, I've built it up to be like a volcano eruption.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm interested in that, to be honest.
Yeah, like for example, like after I had Isla, I remember going to the bathroom and I sat on the toilet and I remember looking and I thought, I'm not even joking, I thought like my vagina was falling out because I had this big red clump like coming out of my vagina. And I'm like, my vagina is falling apart. Something went wrong. And it ended up being they actually left a piece of gauze
Oh,
inside of me. And I,
fantastic.
yeah, so I sat there looking and then I started like, okay, I'm just going to see if it hurts if I pull on it and then pulled it out. And I was so relieved because I'm like, my vagina is falling out of me right now. Like everything's coming out. I'm like, like what else can go wrong? But
This is
I mean,
not what I wanted.
no. And I was
This
like,
is
just
not
a piece
what
of
I signed
gauze.
up for.
Yeah. You're just like,
And
is
that's
this seriously happening? No, just a
and
piece of
then you
gauze.
don't
Thank
think
God.
well, and at first though, but you're not immediately thinking, which we know most times is probably like very well that health professionals do that, but immediately
Yeah.
in your mind going through all that in the state that you are, not doing this the first time. I'm the same way. I'm like, that's it. This is how I'm ending. Like I finally
Yeah.
got through it. I thought I was over it, and anxiety's
Yeah.
like, but here,
Nope.
wait, there's more.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, I was so relieved. I was like, it's just gauze. I remember telling Joe, and I'm like, it's falling out. like there's something coming out of me. Like, this is not okay. And I'm just tugged on. I was so relieved. I was
And
like,
he was
just,
just probably looking at you like, what?
yeah. And it's like, kudos to the men who are beside their women when they are giving birth, because those guys see so much and like
Yes.
do if so much. If you have like a solid partner that's there to like help you out, like he wiped my blood off the floor, like didn't even flinch.
Oh, solid.
Saw
Love it.
so much, but didn't let him traumatize him. But like, if
Oh,
you have a supportive spouse, whether it's a woman or a guy, doesn't matter if they're there to support you. Like, kudos to the partners because they
yeah.
see nightmares and walk out of
They
it okay.
do. And I
They
think
do.
and I think too for them is that it's hard. And I know a lot of, men say it's hard to see the women in pain, for sure. But a lot of
Hmm.
them I think can see the beauty and the respect they have for, what you just did for them to
Yeah.
provide that child as well, right? So I think to
Yeah.
me, it's such a beautiful moment to be able to see mom become dad and dad become mom, or mom
Yeah.
become mom, dad become dad. However, parent becoming
Yeah.
parent, however that is. And even too, like in, like we are talking about, like the adoption, like anytime that you get blessed with a child, however that came in, I think having that support system, whether that's your spouse or your mom or your
Yeah.
friend, those are such beautiful moments that you get to share with people that, are very miraculous, beautiful moments. And it's so
Yeah.
awesome to
So
see that
true.
support, right? And so,
Yeah.
some of us have to do it on not me, I haven't done any of this, but some people have to do it on their own. But having that, like if it can't be a spouse, then it could be your mom, it could be your friend,
Yeah.
anybody, just to hold your hand to do that. And I
Yeah.
think reward of those moments are such a trade-off for like the gross nightmares that you think
Yeah.
about
It's so
down the
true.
road.
Yeah.
um, do you remember how, I know sometimes things go fast and some moms are like, oh, I don't quite remember, do you remember the sizes of the babies?
So Isla was born at 4 pounds, but
Oh,
she
just
went
so
down
tiny.
to under 3 pounds. So she was actually stayed in the NICU for 18 days till she reached 5 pounds. So she was in
Oh,
the hospital. And little Kane was, I think he was 5 pounds. So he was pretty little too, but she was
yeah.
tiny. Like, she would fit on, like, she would be smaller than Joe's forearm. Like, she
Whoa,
was
just a little
tiny.
mini. Oh,
Yeah, just
she's
tiny,
sweet.
tiny.
And she
Yeah.
hasn't, I mean, she's got long, but she's still tiny. Like she's
She's still
like,
tiny. Yeah,
yeah,
tiny and
she's,
sassy.
yeah. And then Kane, well, he's just a powerhouse. So I
Yeah,
don't know. I
yeah.
would have almost expected you to be like, yeah, he came out 10 pounds.
No, he didn't, but he was so small. And like, after you have a baby and you come home, the nurses come and check on you, right? To make sure the
Yeah.
baby's like doing okay. And I should have known he was gonna be a bigger, like his dad's a big guy. But
Yeah.
when the nurse comes, because yeah, babies usually lose weight when they come home, right? Like, they
Yeah.
usually drop below their birth weight a little bit and adjust, but he straight gained weight. Like, he didn't lose any weight at all. And the nurse is like, well, he's up more than his birth weight, and that's not usual. And I should have known then he was just gonna be a tank.
Yeah. No, from
Yeah.
day one, he's just
Yeah,
been
day one.
solid. Yeah.
Yeah, like, just a strong,
Uh,
like, he was so tiny, but he came out, he was holding his head up and like,
just
just
just a
strong as
big
soon as he
boy.
came
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
And I'm glad though. I'm glad that he's like that, but at least you got to carry him as like, that's good for you
Yeah.
that you had a smaller one, and then he decided to poof, like
Yeah.
get solid after the fact.
Yeah.
I love it. And it's so
Yeah.
cute to see them together because he's such like a boy, like a boy. He's gonna be like one of
Yeah.
those like, big linebackers where it's like
Yeah.
Isla's like the like dainty dancer, and it's so cute to see like
Yeah.
how you guys had completely opposite in that sense. It's
Like,
just
total
yeah,
opposite.
I love it. Same genetics and everything, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Same
opposite
parents.
sex. Yeah, I love it so much. So I think I skipped over this one, but if you remember, from labor, in the first round to the C-section, the second, how long? Holy shit, English. The length of kind of from start to finish of both. Do you remember how long roughly those were?
I think with Isla, when I got started getting induced, I'm pretty sure I started getting induced in the morning and I had her, I would say, within like 12 hours.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with Kane, it was just waiting around to figure out what they were going to do. And then as soon as they decided to have a C-section, I was booked and I was in to do it like right away.
And sorry,
But
I'm stoner brain remembered. Were you in? Did they trigger your labor? That's what they were waiting to do. So when you came in, like you weren't going through that labor the whole time. You had to fly through or anything like that.
no, like, I wasn't in, they didn't break my water, I think, until I was in Edmonton. So I had just started it. So when I flew, I wasn't in active labor, and I was kind of like sitting there with like your body's about to go on it, but they weren't sure. And then they're like, "Hey, well, we can't have you go vaginal. We're going to do a C-section before you actually go into full-fledged labor here."
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh, good, good. So you weren't like, at least that's like that
no,
all that moment it is. And then imagine that on top of like, okay, we're gonna fly you, and you're like in the middle of labor on trying on
no.
all fours. You're like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, and then
Like,
you're
no.
getting flown like
Yeah.
emergency flight. You walk up, and I'm not even joking. The pilots of this plane look like they were like 15 years old. They walk around the corner, and you're like, "You're flying me?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah." And they're like, "Just so you know, they're a little young. They're just getting their flying hours." And they look like they're 15 years old. And you're like, "Okay, I'm trusting you
Yeah.
that I'm gonna get there. That you don't even look old enough to drive, let alone fly."
Yeah,
Like,
that's like the
yeah,
not
yeah,
Reference Friends again, but when like Phoebe had the little young boy, she's like, "Okay, Doogie Howser, you're gonna birth my baby." He's like, "What are you, 12?" Like,
yeah. That's seriously what you're thinking. Okay, let's hope that you are like legally allowed to fly this plane right
yeah,
now.
excellent, most excellent. Yeah, so okay,
Yeah,
good. So it wasn't like days upon days within kind of like at least within the day, baby came and done.
yeah,
Awesome, I love that.
yeah,
If you, let's just say hypothetically, I know you're done, but like hypothetically, if you were to do it again, like would you, with your condition that you're in, would you just immediately think, hey, you know what, C-section recovery wasn't bad, the schedule
yeah,
part was pretty good outside of the obviously being airlifted, would that
yeah.
be the route that you'd want to go again? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Like if I did have another baby, it would be a C-section, and you would just hope that Grand Prairie eventually opens up the hospital they've been building for 17 years, because that hospital will have a cardiovascular surgeon, but
That would be
that's
awesome.
not going to be built. That's
Yeah,
not
you're
being
like, so I'm
done.
gonna be about 65 by the time that
Yeah,
hospital is, so probably
yeah,
not, but
yeah,
that's so awesome. And you know what's really amazing is I was saying before, I know a lot of women go into all of it thinking, I don't want to go into a C-section, you know, for certain whatever reason. But what I love is that before that never was an option, and it saved so many women's lives. And
yeah,
now,
it does.
especially with women with so many variable, you know, illnesses or diseases or conditions, it's great to know that it's being so much more talked about, respected, embraced, and not as like a terrifying, because so many women are being like, hey, yeah, we know it's major, we're not discrediting that, and
Yeah,
everyone does have their bad stories, but more often than not now we're seeing positive stories, and the risks kind of, you know, outweighing the rewards when it comes to having that natural, because going through the C-section, especially if you have a condition, just sets you guys
mhm.
and the babies up a little bit more successfully, so less trauma can hope and stress can happen on both you and the baby.
Yeah, and I also think that like for like we are lucky that because of back in the days of women, I think even maybe a little bit now, people have C-sections, and so many women would look down on women. Like same with if you find out, like some women feel, or even like men, oh, you got an epidural, or you don't know what it's like to have a baby. You were
Yeah,
medicated through it, and it's like, who are we to decide who someone's journey is? As
totally.
that baby is born and that baby is healthy and that mom is okay, who are we to decide that? Because great, guess what? We're in 2021 and medicine's a great thing. And now we can do it in a way that women aren't losing their lives and those babies are coming out
Exactly.
okay. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where
Yeah.
we're saying on our show, we want to change the narrative that it's like, if you don't understand someone's decision, that's okay. You
Hmm.
don't have to. You just have to be respectful that they made the right decision. We talked about
Yeah.
this in our birth control and our pregnancy episode.
Yeah.
Like basically, you're, as a parent, the minute you conceive that baby, someone's going to be having opinions on how you've
Yeah.
done it, how you're going to do that, from the minute you're going to be pregnant and how you're doing your pregnancy, to how you birthed your baby, to how you're feeding your
Yeah.
baby, how you're raising your baby. So at the beginning, all of these women are come together and they're saying, do what you feel is best, because no matter what, you're going to piss somebody off. And
Yeah.
that's not important. What's important is what you do, what's best for you. And we have the science, we have the data, we have
Yeah.
the medical advancements to make sure that moms are set up more stressful. If you're like, I'm an anxiety pot. So for me, it's like, I am so glad that if I go in there and be like, you know what, I'm terrified of the complications that have happened in my
Hmm.
own family, in people I know, in my own brain, I would be much more comfortable looking this as an option. It is an option now, which would make me feel so much better, like things could not happen. But you know, I am also like a poo-poo to whatever anybody says, to try
Yeah.
to, when they're trying to say that you're not a mom or you didn't do any of those things, that's just an internal projection that they're going off of you because you did what was best for you. And
Yeah.
right, it doesn't matter how it got here, how the baby was conceived, what you did during your pregnancy. We condone doing crack, but other
Yeah,
than that, it's really up to you. And same with having the baby. That is, as long as the baby gets here safe and you're safe and everyone's happy,
exactly.
that's what matters, not anybody's, opinion online or they're passive aggressive. Oh, I did it this way. So like, cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I'm proud of you. This is how I did it. And I have my baby. And that's all that matters.
Yeah, like for example, my little sister has two beautiful children. With her first son, Henry, she did something called like hypnotherapy, kind of like where she took a course and her husband was in the room with her and she had like relaxing music and she said that he would say these sayings and it would put her into her mind into like this like state that she could get through the pain or whatever. And I remember when she told me this, I was like, there's no way. There's no way. Like I've had a baby. There's no way you can hypnotize yourself out of those pain. It's
Yeah.
not happening. She had a birth plan, and I am telling you, she fucking did that. And she smoked that birth. She did the hypnosis. She did it naturally. Everything that she planned, did it. And after it was done, I was like, well, she did it. Good for her.
Yeah.
She did it in a way that worked for her, and I would have never thought it would work. But she didn't give a shit when anyone said. She went for it. She did it, and she came out saying, "I told you. I
Yeah,
told you."
good for her. And it was good
Yeah,
though. It was probably that like to that little bit of sibling rivalry, or like, in
yeah,
there that was probably like there's probably moments where she was like had a little doubt and she was like, but I have to prove Tracy wrong.
yeah,
So I'm gonna fucking
yeah.
do this. So I love that. And
Yeah, she
it's
didn't.
yeah, and it was like, but then at the same time, especially with your condition, there is no way that that is probably something that would have been best for you,
No,
right?
no, not at
And
all. No.
it would have put you at more risk. And so for
Yeah,
me, it's like, but on the outside, unless they heard your story today and you just said that, an ignorant person would have automatically that thinks in that way would project that
yeah,
onto you. But then if you're like, oh,
yeah,
actually, I probably would have died if I wasn't in the hospital hands, like, those things, whatever,
yeah,
like it was
yeah.
better that I was in the hands of someone in case something happened with my heart.
Hmm.
If I was at home, they probably would have not known, maybe, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, in your condition. So, and then after they would be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. And you're like, yeah, motherfucker. Now you feel
Yeah,
stupid, don't you?
yeah.
Right? Like,
Don't
just
be so
assume you're
quick
going
to
to be that.
judge.
Yeah. Like, just assume you're going to be that stupid motherfucker and just, maybe be like, hey, how was your
Yeah,
birth story? To open up to be like, oh,
yeah,
it's like wild. Like, people would always tell Kayla, and it prevented her from going to the gym because they told her she shouldn't be at the gym pregnant, where she got the okay to do that. And it's like, how about you go to them
yeah.
and be like, oh, good for you for being in here. And I guarantee you that woman's probably be like, yeah, I made sure, or like, oh, I'm bummed out that I can't do powerlifting because I'm pregnant, but at least I got the okay to do light squats. There that
Hmm.
answers your question of your concern without being an ignorant ass, not thinking that these
Yeah,
parents know what they're doing for their own children's safety.
yeah. It was just like Chelsea. Chelsea's whole pregnancy like a boss, multiple spin
Exactly.
classes. And I'm sure that she heard it from, imagine how many people that she shouldn't be working out that much. But she did it before. She did it moderately and she smashed it. She showed that you can do it. Like you can still do
Absolutely.
what you want to do. Like she killed that pregnancy.
Oh, absolutely.
Killed it.
And well, with everything with her mindset is she's always in the right space, that she knows what's good for her, and
Yeah.
she owns that, and it's so inspiring. And yeah, we're going to have her on the show a couple
Yeah.
times
She's
next month
awesome.
talking about fitness, and we did have her come in about her pregnancy too. And I
Yeah.
agree, she was one of those ones. And so that's what we want to embrace, women that are watching the show, is that listen to that intuition. Mother
Yeah.
intuition, woman intuition is a thing, and people are usually just going to project their own insecurities on you, on your choices, based on their choices or their experience. They don't know the full
Yeah.
story. Like, so, and same with you, is the same thing. And just, you're always so like honest and real about your stories, because that that's empowering and it's facts and it's beautiful. there's
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
there's nothing fun about being fake and pretending things aren't what they were. You
Yeah.
do it again in a heartbeat, but you didn't necessarily have the greatest time, but you're still going
No,
to do
I
it because
didn't.
you knew that it was worth it, right? And that's the beautiful
Yeah.
part, right? You're like, yeah, and that's
Yeah.
all moms. You're like, yeah, that wasn't the greatest, but I do it again because it's worth it. And I think that's all new moms just like about to go into it just need to hear, right?
Yeah. It's like it is. You're like, it's the ultimate sacrifice. Like you're sacrificing your health, your body, sometimes your mental well-being. It affects you after you have the baby. But when you have the baby, you're always like, I'll do it again. That's all worth it. Like
Yeah.
I'll have like stretch marks all over my stomach and be proud of them and all this stuff. Because you want to know what? There's lots of women out there that don't get that privilege, and there's
Yes.
families that can't do that. And so to be able to do that, you should feel lucky. And especially if you do it and have a healthy baby,
Yes. Yes.
I think I could be wrong. So having a healthy child is such a blessing.
It is, and that's what we love so much, and we've heard so much, and it makes someone like me, appreciate women like that so much more when they do understand how much of a blessing. Because not everyone's path is easy, whether they
Yeah.
get there. I mean, and it just, that's I think where a lot of us can agree that have had issues. It does get frustrating when people don't see the grateful little gems that they've made. And same with you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've had a little bit more of a traumatic way to get there. So for you, these are like major little miracles in your life
Hmm.
too. And so
Yeah.
it's beautiful, beautiful connection and family relationship. So I
Yeah.
absolutely loved learning more about that. I love every time I have a new guest on that, even that I'm friends with, that I've known for a long time, we know a lot about. It's still awesome to hear this part of it and hear again another mom being like, yeah, it wasn't great, but you know what, guys, it's worth every second of it. Don't be
Hmm.
ashamed of your story, because that's so important for people to hear, especially when you're in the throes of it. When you're
Yeah.
sound of mind, you can think these things about yourself, but the minute you got those hormones and people's
Yeah.
opinions, it's hard to hear through all of it. So thank you for being a voice today, and sharing your
Thank you for
experience.
having me.
Yeah, did you have a good time?
I did. I did. It was awesome. And thank you for doing a podcast like this, because women need to hear these stories. Like you said, it's important just to not feel alone and be like, her story was bad shit crazy. My story doesn't sound that crazy anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all have those like experiences where it's like, okay, like you really struggled in that and I really excelled in here. So here's some tips.
Yeah.
And then, okay, like, oh, I had a really good pregnancy. Here's some good tips, but I had a bad delivery. But then on the flip side, we'll have a girl that had an amazing delivery, but a bad pregnancy. And it's like all those
Yeah.
experiences just equip you more and more. And that's all we want to do. It's like I've said to the other day, I feel like I'm in some sort of like babe university here where I'm just like learning all these life experiences. Even though I believe in education, these experiences are teaching me so much about life and
Yeah.
giving me a whole other view of empathy and connection. And I appreciate that you guys see that's because that's what we're trying to do with this. So the more
Yes.
we get into more things and the more we learn about each other, the more conversation it sparks. I think we all start feeling more aligned and in tune with ourselves, and just more greatness comes from it. So thank you for seeing that and being a part of it. And yeah, I think that about wraps it up for this episode, you guys. This is our first one of 5 babes. And I think by the time we're done, it's going to be like 3 to 4 hours. And I cannot wait because more moms need to hear this stuff. So thank you for everyone that jumped in, listening on the show, part of the show, a part of everything. We are so grateful. We finished our first giveaway. It was given to a babe that was so deserving. And don't you worry, we're going to come out with the second one this month. But again, thank you guys so much. And this wraps it up. We'll see you in our next episode. Bye. Thank you guys so much for stopping by today. We appreciate you so, so much. If you like this episode and you want to hear more or be updated with episode drops, please make sure to send us some love on our Instagram page, the Be Real Babe Podcast. Give us a follow and stay tuned for more realness coming to you next week. Until next time, babes.